Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and I'm getting closer to the end of a series. The end of something that has been a lot of fun, I've really enjoyed. Today I am reviewing Piranha Picnic, book number 9 in the Heebie Jeebies series by Rod Randall. Now, this book here, book number 9 in the series. This one was an interesting one. I've just come off of reading book number 8, Dances with Werewolves, which had a great opening, great setting, great character development, a great spooky stories in the middle of that book. The very end was not that great. So I was interested to see, okay, what's the next one in the series going to be like? This is the last one that Rod Randall wrote for the series, as book number 10 was written by Paul Buchanan. Heebie Jeebies is a Christian book series that was a Goosebumps knockoff series that came out in the late 1990s and early 2000s, like 2000, 2001. There were 10 books in the series, and Paul Buchanan and Rod Randall both co-wrote them back and forth. Sort of. A couple of times Paul Buchanan did 2 in a row, a couple of times Rod Randall did 2 in a row, but they each did 5 books in the series. So this was Rod Randall's last book that he wrote for the series. Piranha Picnic is an interesting one, and I think there are some great things about it. So let's talk about it. The plot here is very interesting. There are some fascinating, emotionally complex layers that I'm going to get to in a second here. This book is about a kid named Nick. He has an older sister and his parents, and they live near this river. And this river is in the south, so it's a little ambiguous about what southern state this takes place in, but it's in the south somewhere. And there's this river near their house. There's an old plantation nearby the river. And so it's kind of this very southern kind of setting that this takes place in. So Nick and his family are at the river for a picnic. And as Nick goes out, he's going to fish. He loves to fish. It's one of his favorite things to do. He goes out to fish, and suddenly some strange things start to happen because there are some weird fish out there, he thinks. One fish, it seems bites his lure in half and sends it back, and then a minute later he accidentally drops his lunch of ribs into the river, and when he finds the plate again, the ribs have all been eaten down to the bone. So his conclusion, there's gotta be piranhas living in the river. And so this sets off an interesting story where Nick is trying to solve what's going on at the river because he likes to fish there. And he's curious are there piranha in the water now? There's also a mysterious new park ranger that suddenly appeared that seems a little fishy. No pun intended. Anyway, so this new park ranger, something's up with him. And unfortunately, his older sister Sandy seems to be smitten with this park ranger who I think is a junior park ranger because he's under 18. He's 17 or something like that. So Sandy really likes this park ranger. Nick is suspicious of him. He thinks that the park ranger might have something to do with it. But in the river, it does seem like piranhas have invaded. And at the same time, the town is seeing a lot more rain than usual. In fact, many of the streets and drains are starting to overflow. And now Nick is worried. What if the piranhas decide to swim outside the river and invade their town? What will happen? Can Nick save the day and figure out what's going on? You'll have to read it to find out, because this is a spoiler-free review. So let's talk about Piranha Picnic, because this has some great stuff going on. And I will say, I said with Dances with Werewolves, there was something they could have done that I felt like would have elevated the material quite a bit and made it just have that extra punch. And I actually think there's one thing here too that could have been done to give this book the extra punch it needed. Because I will say, Heebie Jeebies has been an interesting book series to read. There's actual danger that often happens. In the other Christian Goosebumps knockoff series, Spine Chillers, there's almost never any danger. It's always very much like the scratching of the door, open the door, it's a monster. No, it's the family cat who wants to get in to get food. So it's very much like there's never anything actually dangerous happening. But in Heebie Jeebies, there actually is danger. And I think that while there's a lot of danger in this book, from some fishy situations, there isn't a final thing they could have done that I think would have elevated the spooky level just a tiny bit. And so I think that that was a missed opportunity. However, the journey there is a lot of fun. Now, I will say, for part of this book, I was kind of wondering, I was thinking, what is Nick's motivation for caring about this? Because it seems like something a little random for him to be like, I gotta figure out what's going on with the piranhas at the river. And so, because there's nothing that's necessarily tying him to it, so I felt like that motivation was a tiny bit weak. And then I thought about, well, sometimes kids get into stuff like this. They kind of get it like their mind wrapped around something and think, I've got to do it. It's something I need to do. And then when I started thinking about the emotional layers that are going on in this story as well, I thought, oh, that's why. And I wish this had been explained just a tiny bit more. Because what's going on in this particular book that's very fascinating is Nick's mom is on a business trip that's going to be like a month long. And Nick has a lot of complicated emotions about his mom being gone for so long. And as he's processing those emotions, he very much wants to avoid the conversation. Like he's kind of avoiding his mom, doesn't want to talk about it before she leaves. And then when she has left, he doesn't really want to talk much about it. And so he's really kind of avoiding all the conflict and all the thoughts about his mom being on this business trip. And so I thought that that was an interesting layer, because then I thought, oh, he's distracting himself from his mom being gone by being overly involved in this piranha situation. So I thought that was really well done. Nick also has a really good friend, Morris, who has a great character arc. I'm not going to say anything else about it because I think that would be a spoiler, but Morris has a great character arc that I thought, that was really good. There's just some really great stuff going on with Morris. So I can't say anything else about that because it would give it away. There are also some pretty creepy moments in this book. Some moments that I thought, ooh, that was pretty creepy and pretty scary. I also thought that there were some very clever ideas. As the two kids are trying to figure out what's going on, Nick and Morris kind of team up together to try and figure this thing out. Nick has some very clever ideas that I thought, wow, that was genius. Like at one point he tricks someone into giving him some information in just a really clever way. And I really admired it. I thought, oh, that's very smart. This book also made me laugh out loud. I laughed very hard at a couple of moments that were just funny. There were some just really genuinely funny moments in this book. And I think Rod Randall has a really great sense of humor that he can sneak into some of these spookier moments that lightens it, but not in a cheapening way, in a character depth way. My brother and I were actually talking about this, how sometimes in some books there can be like narration humor from a first person narrator who kind of is making a lot of jokes about a situation. Sometimes this happens in Goosebumps quite a bit, and the jokes almost kind of wash out some of the spookiness instead of amplifying the character as it should. And so we were having a conversation about that, and I feel like in this book Rod Randall strikes the right balance with Nick's character and giving him some humor in the narration but not making it too over the top. So this was a great entry in this series, I thought. It was a very solid one. I don't think it's my favorite. It's not at the top for me, but it is solidly in the middle as a good entry in the series. So it kind of is the same level, I would say, as Dances with Werewolves, where there's one thing at the end. I think if they had changed it, made that one little switch, it would have been a very powerful just moment and a great way to end the book. But it didn't. And so I kept thinking, wow, this is a really good entry in the series. I feel like I don't know what was going on with book number 6, Wild Ride on Bigfoot Mountain, because that one is definitely the weakest of the entire series. I don't know what happened with that one, because the rest of the series has been pretty solid. I feel like solid is one of the best words you could use to describe the series. So at the end of the day, I would give Piranha Picnic a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I think it was well done. It was a lot of fun to read. I had a great time. It had a great atmosphere. Like I said, there were some clever moments, some humor. It was a good entry in the series. You know, if you're curious about this series, I still think the best one to read is The Ice Cream Truck, or Along Came a Spider. I think those two, in my opinion, are probably the best of the series. This one is a very solid one, though. And Dances with Werewolves is also very, very good. So those four would kind of be the ones so far that I would say I would definitely recommend. Although I'm reading Return to Terra Cove right now, and right now that one is a lot of fun and could end up being my favorite of the series. So we'll see what unseats it. Once I've read all of these, I will do a breakdown of my rankings for where all the books land for me. But until next time, keep reading, everybody. Bye!